American Connection Corps member serving with Generation West Virginia. And today, for our webinar, we are going to be focusing on looking at working together towards adoption with BEAD and internet service providers. We have Tammy and Melissa here with us today to talk a little bit more about that. So before we get started with that, I'm going to hand it over to Annie to talk a little bit about Generation West Virginia and the broadband program.
Thanks so much, Emma. So Generation West Virginia, for those who may or may not be familiar, is a statewide nonprofit really focused on ensuring that young West Virginians have the skills and opportunities available to access well-paying careers here in the state so they can choose to stay if they want to. We have four kind of main programs that we focus on. The first is called our Career Connector. And this is a combination of we have a West Virginia focused job board. We require salary transparency from employers. We also run a resume bank so folks can submit their resume to be matched potentially with jobs. And we also have what we call the generational talent search, which is essentially if you are looking for a candidate from West Virginia, we can work with you to find the right person to do that. Evan Nelson is our program coordinator for that. He does a really great job. We also have a partnership with an organization called Tech Connect, where we post specifically kind of software and tech related jobs. So if that's of interest, please feel free to take a look. We also run a fellowship. So the GWV Fellowship has been around for quite some time. This is kind of a fellowship opportunity designed for early career young professionals. They do both virtual and in-person sessions all across the state. And it's a really great both networking and professional development opportunity we have. Dogs are going bonkers. Do you want to talk about New Force real quick?
Yes, sorry. Are you good to talk now?
I'm so sorry. Apologies. Somebody at the door, and I have work from home. Joys of remote work. All right. Do I need to start at New Force, Emma? Okay, so New Force is our we've had a software development training program transitioned to data analytics a few years ago, kind of as market shifted. And that program in its current form is actually going to sunset this year. We're kind of looking at ways to retool based on what current needs are. And then we have our broadband program, which is probably what you are most familiar with, if you're on this webinar at least. And we started out doing infrastructure support work, doing technical assistance. Last couple of years, we've transitioned a little bit more to kind of the other side of broadband access, which is your adoption work, digital literacy, digital skills, device access, those kinds of things. So glad to have you here. Can you go to the next slide, Emma?
Shoot, I don't know what just happened. Oh gosh. Technical difficulties. I am so sorry. Sorry, guys. My service is not working right now very well. Let
Okay.
me just.
I'll go ahead and just talk through the programs a little bit more while you do that and get the slides back.
Okay.
Um, so, again, like I said, we started with infrastructure. I've been doing kind of the broadband access side of things. And one of the ways that, I'm really excited about, and again, many of you all have been part of that, is we've kind of reorganized a bunch of our individual county steering committees, and we now do what we're calling the West Virginia Connected Communities Network, which is a mix of a quarterly statewide meeting. The next one's actually coming up here in a few weeks, May 26th at 3. And then we do quarterly regional meetings as well. It's not all the regions across the state, but the regional meetings especially have kind of taken the place of those previous steering committee meetings where there's a little bit more room for discussion and updates about what's happening on the ground, and hopefully places where we can start doing some project planning as funding opportunities come up. So I guess getting started for today's webinar. I'm really excited to have our guest speakers here today. This is a question that I think we get asked more than anything, probably when people are thinking about putting together projects on the local basis or trying to get engaged in what's going on with broadband. And the question has really been, how do I work with our local ISP, and what does that look like? And how do I keep up on what's happening, and how do we include them in things that we're planning? Because it feels like they should be at the table. And I would definitely argue that yes, they should be at the table for a whole myriad of reasons. So I'm really excited about that. I'm going to give a little bit of quick context on kind of the state of deployment, just in the state in general, especially with, what's coming with BEAD. And then we'll kind of jump right in. So, this is kind of an overview. This is not everything. This is not all of the projects that have been funded, but some of the big ones that have kind of come through here over the last couple of years. So obviously, the American Rescue Plan, or ARPA, which a lot of people are familiar with, funded a lot of projects in the state. We had RDOF, which was the Rural Digital Opportunity Fund, another, what, $362 million. There's been several other funds coming from ARC, USDA, both Reconnect and Community Connect projects, community development block grants. And then, the big one that a lot of people have heard of is, of course, BEAD. West Virginia was allocated $1.2 billion through that program. I haven't double checked this number to see if it shifted here this spring, but as of September, the final proposal was for $625 million. I think it's 8 providers across the state to cover the rest of our unserved addresses. So all of this funding is going to projects across the state. You can kind of see this map here from the Broadband Enhancement Council's report from, I think, last year, maybe the year before. These are projects that have been awarded, and for folks on the ground, that does not mean that means that service is there yet, right? Many of these projects are just getting to either the end of their permitting phase or their construction phase. And then BEAD, which of course is the big one, is kind of just getting started here, with providers still working on their contracts with the state. So all of this to say, we have made incredible strides over the last several years in terms of getting funding for the actual deployment on the ground. There's a lot of stuff planned. There's a lot of projects planned. You may or may not actually see trucks driving down your road for the next, honestly, probably 1 to 5 years, depending on which funding source that's coming from. Some of them, ARPA, RDOF have deadlines that are sooner. So you'll see some of those projects happen sooner. But again, BEAD is a little bit more delayed, just because it was a later program. The other piece I'll just mention here, because I know some folks here have asked questions about that. We still don't have news on the BEAD non-deployment funds. This was originally written in for states that had more than they needed to cover their unserved addresses. And there was a whole host of things that states could plan to use those funds for. NTA has not released guidance yet on this pot of non-deployment funds. So until that happens, the state can't really plan for what they want to do with it. And a lot of us are all kind of just waiting. There were things in there for broadband workforce development, speeding up permitting, pole attachments, some contingency. There's been a lot of different ideas about what could help make sure that deployment goes smoothly out of that non-deployment fund pot. But until there's guidance, we are still waiting. We did hear at an event in April. That guidance may come out in the next couple months, but as of today, unless anyone else has breaking news that I don't know about, I still haven't seen it. So, um, again, quick overview where we are, a lot of stuff happening, a lot of moving parts. Frankly, it's pretty exciting to see, but again, on the ground, we won't see all those trucks probably quite yet, um, unless you're in a couple places. So, all right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and just jump in here. And Emma, you could probably just turn the presentation off so we can see Melissa and Tammy when they're talking here. And yeah, so to get started, I guess, for Melissa and Tammy. So I'm really excited to welcome Melissa O'Brien from Citynet and Tammy Watkins from Comcast to come and talk with us here today. But let's get started maybe just with your introductions, who you are, your organization, and any background you'd like to share before we jump into questions.
Okay. I'm Melissa O'Brien. I'm the External Affairs Manager for Citynet. I've been there for about 3 years. Prior to that, I spent 24 years in public education, 10 as a teacher and 14 as an administrator. Left public education, the public sector went to private for the last 6 years. Big change from public to private, but I spent some time in business development at an engineering firm, primarily focused on broadband expansion. And I spent some time at the Middle Ohio Valley Regional Council as executive director working on infrastructure expansion. But very fortunate to come to Citynet. I've been a lifelong resident of Roane County, a former county commissioner here, so I'm deeply invested and committed to opportunity expansion for rural West Virginia, and that's what I love about Citynet. Jim is our owner, grew up in rural Randolph County, so he understands better than most what it's like to need these services. So we are a small but mighty and growing drastically ISP. We're headquartered in Bridgeport. We have offices in Wheeling and Morgantown and Charleston. And after our BEAD deployment and that build out is finished, we will have a service footprint that touches 32 counties in the state of West Virginia.
That is a tough act to follow, but I'll do my best. My name is Tammy Watkins. I serve as the Director of Government Affairs for Comcast in West Virginia. I focus on building our partnerships with state and local leaders to advance our broadband expansion in the area, to improve policy outcomes, and of course, to strengthen our overall community impact. I have 20 years working at the intersection of, well, I like to call it the intersection of infrastructure, public policy, and economic development, all things that we think are very important in the state of West Virginia. And I've seen firsthand how connectivity can really change the trajectory of communities, especially in rural areas. I am not a stranger to West Virginia. I actually grew up in West Virginia, Kanawha County. I'm a product of Kanawha County Public Schools and really great public school teachers. I attended undergrad at Shepherd, graduate school at West Virginia University. So I'm very familiar with the personalities and politics of the state. Right now, we have a pretty strong footprint in both the northern and eastern panhandle, as well as Monongalia County. We have our largest footprint, however, many of you know, in places like Cabell and Putnam. We are rapidly expanding in places like Wayne County. We are expanding in places like Mercer County. So we're looking forward to, after BEAD deployment, being able to move into even more rural areas of the state. Rural broadband, we think, represents the future of where broadband's going because it's about connectivity for all.
Great. All right. So kind of starting back at the first part of the question that I mentioned that we get all the time, how do we keep up with what's going on? What is the best way for a community, local stakeholders, local leaders to stay informed and kind of keep up with what's happening? Are there maps, timelines, local contacts? What are the ways that a community can kind of reach out and keep informed?
I'll go ahead and we'll bounce back and forth. I'd say let's go in alphabetical order, but CityNet and Comcast are alphabetically aligned. So what we have found works best, particularly in the rural broadband space, the most successful deployments are the ones that are transparent and locally grounded. Now, the good news is for a lot of our projects, here's what I would say for stakeholders on the call. The good news is a lot of work over the years has been done in this space by a lot of really wonderful local organizations. So, even before BEAD or at the very early stages of BEAD, companies like Comcast were able to plug into ongoing conversations on the ground with state and local leaders. And that really is how the conversations get started. Now, how do state and local leaders know where the need is and where the need should go and how we're growing economically, socially in parts of West Virginia? We have wonderful regional leads and task force organizations in West Virginia that we've been working with over the past 10 years in this space. So what I would continue to say is really important is regular updates with your local leaders, staying connected with your economic development authorities, your chambers of commerce, and local government officials. Comcast, as we roll out BEAD, as we've done with similar projects for the communities that are affected, we have to bear that burden of making sure that we're communicating reasonable timelines, milestones for projects. In Monongalia County, we look forward to having a kickoff in the next few months for an area that we'll actually be serving through RDOT funds. And then also, we want to make sure that we are having these clear escalation paths for questions and concerns. Because what are we really navigating? We're navigating things like pole attachments. We're navigating things like right-of-way. These are issues where, again, that are going to be driven locally. And we want to make sure that residents, affected communities, that they have those means of staying connected. So whether that's through your organization, Annie, or the other organizations, we're always looking for those opportunities to stay grounded. And of course, staying close with providers, following us online, following us on social media. All of these things work together for really strong outcomes in this space.
Yeah, I'll elaborate on that. I think our West Virginia Office of Broadband has a phenomenal website. It's tremendous in what it can give you in information. They have a project tracker on there that you can search by county, see the projects awarded, who is in your area, what the project is. So I think that is a great place for people to start so they can know who is in their backyard and who is building. I think their story map for BEAD, I share it everywhere I've been because it's a great high level resource to show in a graph type form who is there and what percentage of the county they will be receiving, but also talks about the narrative to transformation over BEAD because it does look different over the first time we heard what BEAD was and what was coming versus what we actually received. So that story is very, very important. And the state did a very good job of explaining that. For Citynet in particular, our projects, when you go to our landing page on citynet.net, you can go to a fiber map. And I worked with our marketing director, and we have a great map that a very, very good visual that shows where our current projects are. We've denoted what BEAD counties are. The Nicholas County Reconnect project that's upcoming there. So at a quick view, you can see exactly where we are going and where we will be. I think that is super important. But for me, with my local government background, that's where I want to be. Is in the county. So I've got 28,000 miles on my vehicle in the last 10 months, traveling to all these counties. So I go to county commission meetings, city council meetings, EDA meetings, or I've even been to Girl Scout meetings talking about cybersecurity. So anywhere anybody will invite me and let us come to the table and explain what we can offer, how we can be a good partner, what projects are coming to your area. We are there, and I've put my information in the chat. So if anybody needs a community update or more information on a project, to reach out, and I'm always available.
Great. Thanks so much, Melissa. Do either of you have a particular example that you'd like to share, maybe of, a particular project or a particular community that did a really good job of staying connected and updated throughout a build-out process?
Yeah, I'll point out, to go back to Monongalia County, the Mon County Partnership, our ability to plug in. So for those of you who aren't familiar, that organization represents, for Monongalia County, it represents the intersection of economic development, as well as representatives from city government, local government, as well as any number of other stakeholders in the nonprofit sector. And our relationship with that organization from start to finish with it spending these funds have helped navigate our construction process, identifying that local need and helping us develop those maps for our own market expansion. And the other thing that I will say that makes Comcast a little bit unique is whether it's Monongalia County, Cabell County, Mercer County, our drivers are not only, subsidized projects, but it also represents our own capital investment. So we've been able to use the MON partnership to help navigate that space. And they've also been a really tremendous resource for us in terms of community outreach. So it's notifying the public, it's notifying local elected officials. It's really been helpful in helping move these projects forward.
For me and Annie Generation West Virginia is involved in this project, but it's Pocahontas County. That county many years ago, before we ever heard of all these billions of dollars coming into the state of West Virginia, they were on the forefront of taking the lead and searching for projects and funding to expand service in Pocahontas County. Probably the most passionate group of people about expansion of services, and I see Annie grinning, ever. It can tell. You go to the website, the State Department's Office of Broadband's website, and you can see they're pretty good shape in terms of being served, and a lot of that is to their benefit. But they established, the county commission did a broadband local council, and that council meets once a month, so everything is very transparent. It's a virtual meeting. Media's there, providers are there, Generation West Virginia's there, the local Planning and Development Council, Region 4 is present, engineers, everybody, commissioners, broadband council members from the state. There's a plethora of people there, and we talk through all projects, not just the one that they are leading, which is the Pocahontas ARC project, but I talk about our RDOF investment there, our CAF2 investment there, our future BEAD investment there. So it's very transparent on the entire picture of future development, current and future projects there in Pocahontas County. But great partners in that, and we're fighting significant. Tammy mentioned pole attachment. I think that makes us all gray, but we have some significant pole attachment issues in Pocahontas County. So it's been nice to see everybody is like, what's our lane here? How do we help support Citynet get on these poles and navigate some of that? And that support is tremendous in changing the trajectory of projects and the future of pole attachments. So it's that, to me, is the highlight project for Citynet.
Great. Thanks, y'all. I think, one of the things that's so valuable when you have, either, again, like the Mon County partnership, the Pocahontas County, the thing that I see as working with folks across the state is you get that intersection of people from different sectors working together in that space. And that's so helpful across the board. I mean, again, whether it's coming together to talk about updates or, there's been several instances where, coming back to policy, right? I know the Pocahontas County crew there has written letters to the state and letters to representatives and these kinds of things as issues come up to say, hey, actually, this really matters and is affecting our projects, the providers, what we're trying to get done here. So I think that those partnerships are so great to see. I love seeing that and seeing kind of the cross sector collaboration that can happen in those spaces. All right. So shifting the conversation just a little bit here, again, deployment's the first step, right? We got to get connected. We got to get people hooked up so they can connect to the internet. But, I know both of you all have already had projects or have active projects in some of these more rural and lower income communities across the state. In your experience, have you run into challenges and issues that are keeping people from subscribing or from adopting new service when it comes in? Have you had any, have you run into anything like that across the state?
Yes. That's the short answer. I can break that out into, so I want to highlight three primary ones. The first one that continues to dog our industry, and that's affordability. And I think affordability also is part of a national conversation. So, you can lay all the fiber on the poles underground to the houses, but if people can't afford a regular monthly occurring charge for internet service, they're not gonna buy it. Comcast offers its low cost option with Internet Essentials, which connects families to broadband for less than $20 a month. Again, for some families that still may be a challenge. And so, something that we may consider from a policy space is the impact of subsidies at the federal level or at the local level to even help make broadband more affordable, because that still continues to be a primary challenge for us. There's also a lack of familiarity or confidence with technology. Again, even if we can overcome the hurdle with the service, even if we can overcome the affordability, if you are somebody who hasn't used a home computer or a laptop or a tablet, that still is a barrier for getting people to adopt this technology. Maybe you go to work and you just use your computer at work and you don't know how to translate that to something at home. So it's overcoming that gap with, again, access, education, awareness, plugging in at the libraries, plugging in at the schools, helping people understand how technology can impact their lives. And then that also touches on another issue that we see, especially in rural broadband, and that's uncertainty about how it fits in your life. Maybe I don't want to do online banking. I don't want to see a doctor. I'm not going to process these documents using a home internet connection. So in rural communities, you're overcoming those gaps in addition to trust gaps with large companies. I'm an entity that sits in Philadelphia. Try comparing that to somebody like a Citynet who's sitting there locally. So for a company like Comcast, we are constantly having to overcome that. We are local, we employ locally, we have stores and opportunities to connect locally. So, those are some of those challenges.
Yeah, our challenges are similar, but I'll mention a few other subscription challenges is people's frustration. We're experiencing a significant influx of people taking satellite options such as Starlink or 5G, such as T-Mobile, just because of the time it's available. And as Tammy can tell you, the process to getting fiber on a pole or underground is very lengthy. We fight battles, as we've both mentioned, the pole attachment issues, or if you're in an HOA, with the process you need to do to go underground. So that definitely hinders us in terms of speed to market. And we all live in a generation as I want what I want and I want it now. So that is a battle that we are fighting. So we're really trying to educate the communities on the benefits of fiber and the resiliency, the low latency, the economic impact of that. So we're trying to do a better job at that. So hopefully some different things that we're working on can help expedite the speed to market. I think the state is trying to really streamline some construction issues for BEAD deployment. That should really help us, all entities, all providers, and multiple entities are working on pole attachment problems. I know we have filed a public service complaint on one entity, just because of the hindrances that it's causing. So hopefully that can help. Another thing that our residential sales people are encountering are the aging population in the state of West Virginia. Many times when our door knockers are out there, or we get a phone call, it's, we don't need the internet. We don't, and personally, I don't know if it's they don't need the internet, or if they're, like Tammy said, uncomfortable and have that lack of skills to really know how to utilize it's to its fullest. And that trust issue comes with anybody, I think, especially when we hear about artificial intelligence and the cyber issues, so security issues. So I think we all need to do a better job at probably educating on that. And cell phones. When I was at the MOVRC and we had to go out and do those surveys for the state, a lot of, and what surprised me were the younger kids. We don't need internet access. It's on my phone. But I think if you're doing FaceTiming or a telemedicine visit or something like that, checking online banking, that works. But if you truly want to use it to further your education, online work, things like that, we need to really get out the importance that fiber can provide there. For us, trying to address the affordability, when I first came to Citynet, we had a one-size-fits-all offering. We had a single-tier offering, and so now we offer a multiple package at varying price points to try to hit varying household budgets. I think that has helped us tremendously. And many people appreciate the fact that we are a West Virginia business. When you call our call center, it is based in Bridgeport. I think we've all had the frustration of sitting online hours and hours. You drop the call. So we take great pride in our customer service and our call center that sits here in central West Virginia. And our people understand the needs and values of rural West Virginians. And I do think that that helps us greatly.
Yeah, for sure. The trust piece, we just had our annual conference last year and or last year feels like it last week, less than 5 days ago. Um, and both Tammy and Melissa were able to be there, but that definitely came up, right? The trust component and how do I use technology and do I use technology and is it safe for me to use it? And we have organizations across the state, of course, that are doing digital skills work and digital literacy work. And that's something that comes up a lot, like I don't want to use this thing, but as more services get online, it's becoming more of a necessity than it ever was before. There's a lot of things that you used to be able to run down and do downtown, and that is not an option. You have to connect.
Yeah.
So, well, I guess, kind of going on with this topic a little bit more. I mean, like I said, we've got a lot of the partners that we have on here and that I work with in the day to day are really thinking about how do they help their residents be ready to take advantage of these opportunities when they come. Are there ways, beyond the network arriving, which is the primary thing, obviously, for a service provider? Are there ways that providers can or already do support, local broadband adoption work, digital skills programs, community projects? Are there ways that some of the entities on the ground can gauge whether that's funding, sponsorships, other kinds of partnership? What does that look like and what makes it a good fit as a provider, kind of thinking about what makes sense for your limited resources? Because, deployment is not a cheap thing to do.
Uh, yeah, I'll go. So a couple of things. So this is an area, especially in a place like West Virginia, where our partnerships are essential. Providers can play a meaningful role as well. And so one of the ways we can play a meaningful role is to continue funding and sponsorships for local digital skills programming, and those specifically for those organizations like a Generation West Virginia that are dedicating the people and the resources to digital skills training. At Comcast, we also sponsor, and some of you may have heard me speak about this last week, our Women's Work Initiative in Monongalia County, which helps transition women with more enhanced digital skills in the workforce. We work with the A.D. Lewis Center in Huntington. We also provide funding and sponsorships for the Boys and Girls Club and the Eastern Panhandle as well, because these are organizations that are dedicated to those types of local digital skills programs. So that's something that we need to continue to do. And we are constantly on the lookout for new opportunities. And the one thing that I will say, it's not enough for, look, Comcast can write checks left and right? Well, technically, like, no, please, nobody write that down. But like all the spend in the world isn't going to help us or help the state or these organizations if we're not doing it with some goal in mind or some program in mind. So we also really do encourage entities that do want to work with us, that do want to partner with us. Let's be upfront about what we're both trying to do, and that's get people connected in the state. Also, internet service providers, we have got to remain committed to affordability, whether that is maintaining programs like Internet Essentials, which keep the cost of internet less than $20, but pairing affordable internet with devices. We want people to be able to get low cost internet and low cost devices, pairing low cost internet with low cost cable service. And one of the ways that we can also build trust is, pairing internet with the ability for people to keep that landline phone. That's a big difference for a lot of our seniors and older communities. So it's, ways that we can support adoption, make it affordable, and pair it with technologies that people need and already understand. And then, of course, like I said earlier, partnerships. And I want to highlight two specific. Libraries are just a treasure. And because they are the first first entry point for so many people. And then also with workforce organizations, needing to tell that story. We all know the effect that digital skills are going to have on the workforce. 95% of all jobs that are coming online require people to have basic digital skills. The era of unskilled labor is over. And we all know this. And our ability to partner with workforce organizations is critical. Just a couple thoughts that I would throw out there.
Yeah, providers can and should be involved in, outside of network deployment. And ultimately, at the end of the day, that helps us because if subscribers can access those tools, they're going to take advantage of those services, and which we need that return on our investment to pay for these millions of dollars in investments, whether it's private or our matching funds that's needed for that. So Annie mentioned non-deployment funds. I'm hopeful, pray every day that those funds come to us so we can work on some of the, whether it's digital skills or workforce development. Prior to knowing that had been put on hold, and I was working with multiple entities already, universities, colleges, some EDAs, regional councils on some plans for those. So we've got those. We kind of touch base on those from time to time just to keep them on the forefront. So if and when those opportunities should arise again, we are ready to submit applications and start working on that again. So hopefully that happens. In the interim, actively just support things as they arise. So for example, I had a school system just talk to me the other day about, educating grandparents on cybersecurity and what they need to look for and things. So I'm working with people and within our company, and we're developing some projects that can kind of fill those skill gaps for those school systems that they need. And I serve as a connector. There are many of these organizations that they are out there that there's great things happening already. They just don't know how to take that to the next level, or they don't know how to talk to somebody that's already doing that to kind of share ideas. So, where I do travel the state so much, I love playing connector and say, hey, Logan Library is doing something wonderful, or the Logan Senior Center is doing something wonderful. Connect with Upshur County Library. So I enjoy playing that. And that's a zero cost to anybody. That's just sharing the knowledge that we've already gleaned from the work that we've done. Generation is wonderful at helping scale those opportunities up. Entities like High Rocks, they have great programs like their Tech Express that helps fill some skill gaps in refurb equipment, but also teaching some things, how to access device access and different things like that. So just educating people about those programs that are out there. We also provide sponsorships, but I'm like Tammy, sometimes money, that's what people want. They want that sponsorship check, but sometimes that in-kind, feet on the ground, helping, drive policy is super important, and she plays more a role in that than I do. But those are all important things, and this filling the skill gap as well.
Absolutely. So, kind of as a follow-up to that, if a community organization, local leadership, somebody did have an idea for a way that they wanted to partner with you all, what is the best way for them to start that relationship? I mean, I think, a lot of websites, when you look up your local providers, are obviously very focused on, signing up for service, and are we in your area yet? And where do they go? Where do they start if they have an idea and they want to reach out?
Starting with your local on the ground government affairs team is the best entry point. Melissa said it best. We're connectors. That's what we are tasked to do every single day we show up to work. And going back to something that ISPs can do better, certainly, putting the miles in the car, going to the events, and making sure that we're linking to those organizations and entities so that people see us. But we are definitely the first line of defense. Now, the other thing that I will add in terms of reaching out to us, certainly we need to do a better job of staying connected to the communities, but also people are, because West Virginia has done so good with this, it's done so well with this. Engaging with local government officials, engaging with chambers of commerce, engaging with Office of Statewide Broadband, which is a tremendous asset in terms of this question. So if you're sitting in your community and you're like, when is my internet service coming? You have ways to connect with ISPs directly.
Yes. Citynet strategically made a decision 3 years ago to hire me strictly for this. When I was brought aboard, it was to be a local level liaison. So that's where I primarily focus. But like Tammy said, there's so many resources out there. The state offers their Broadband Enhancement Council each month. It's virtually. Residents can hop on there. You rarely see a lot of those people, but great knowledge base, and their website is there. But I'm always open for a conversation. I feel like I can speak for Tammy too. I think she would be too. My again, my information's in the chat. I always give my cell when I am at events and things, and people will call you. And I have to say, I'll answer you anytime. And people have alternate shifts and things. So I truly have people text me at midnight saying, "Hey, can you check my address?" Because that's the time that they get home from work. So that doesn't bother me. I think being available like that, making yourself part of the community. So I really try to do that. I'll wear Citynet gear if I'm going to a football game, and they'll come up and say, "Hey, I saw your trucks in our neighborhood." So making yourself part of the community so every conversation can be worthwhile. I want to make people comfortable. Come to me, have a conversation. We can figure out, can I help you? Do you have an idea of a partnership, or is there something we're already doing that we can fill a skill gap for you, or they just may want to know about the project when fiber is going to be on the pole outside of their house. So I think keeping those open lines of communication for both of us is extremely important.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know that we are about 1:45, and I wanted to leave a little bit of time if anybody on the call has questions. But maybe I might come behind my last two questions here. So, I know we talked about some great examples of people keeping up with deployment, but do you have any specific kind of community partnerships that you would love to share, or an example? And then kind of any final thoughts or comments?
For me, it's the Marshall Wetzel Lead project. Is we do lots of public-private partnerships, and that is exemplary project for us because those two county commissions knew early on, had great foresight that they wanted to be proactive in leveraging some ARPA funds, so they provided the matching funds for that project. Those funds went to RED, the Economic Development Authority Agency, and the Northern Panhandle, and they're housing those. And kind of overseeing the project. Citynet applied for the funds. We're doing all the reporting. And then part of that agreement is when revenue starts to flow, money is going back into that RED account for future infrastructure development. So everybody seamlessly understands their roles and fulfills that role, and makes it an extremely efficient project and a lasting community benefit that's going to continue further down the pike as money grows in that account. So that's absolutely my exemplary project. But just final thoughts are Annie, we appreciate you, I think, for having us today, and the opportunity to be here and share what we do for our companies, but all the outstanding leadership and work that Generation West Virginia has done for expanding broadband across our state, and and your patience in supporting us. Fiber expansion is not an easy thing. It is going to continue to grow throughout our state. It just takes time. The companies are here. Comcast is here. Citynet is here. Many others are here. We contribute in meaningful ways through in-kind or sponsorships, or providing well-paying jobs across our state, which will help with the economic development across our state and help keep our youth here. So our subscribers who choose those local and established providers like Comcast and Citynet are helping generate further economic impact on our communities. So we appreciate those subscribers that do choose Comcast and do choose Citynet or any of the other providers that are here in West Virginia. So if anybody has any questions about availability or projects or potential partnerships, I'd be delighted to assist you. Again, my info's in the contact or in the chat, and Annie always knows how to get a hold of me.
Thanks. Amy, how about you?
Yeah, everything Melissa said was on point. In terms of, thank you, Generation West Virginia, and thank you to organizations that you are also aligned with. There's one unique partnership. I think you've heard me talk about a lot of state and county, and that seems very, but there's one partnership that I'm really proud of. It was one of my first when I came on board at Comcast, and it was with an HOA in Morgan County. Part of lead funds in the state. It was delivering service to about 75 homes in a very rural area in Morgan County. And it all started when one neighbor saw one truck, and then she put together a listserv of all of her neighbors. And then the listserv grew over time. And we were able to connect our construction teams, connected internally with government affairs, and said, hey, these folks are interested. We need to lean in and help support them. And so that started a relationship with us going to the HOA meetings, reporting out on where we were building, how many homes we were adding. The neighbors were incredibly helpful in getting us access to right of way to make sure, we could cross 3 homes to deliver to 12 more homes on the back end. This community was so wonderful that we actually had an event at the end of the build. Local community church opened us up. We were able to bring in some demonstrations of the technology, everything from, our home security to the X1 box that we had out at the time, telling people how to navigate with the remote. So that was an incredibly hyper local relationship that we developed. And it all started when one resident saw one truck and she said, that's it, get in here. And so I hope it's, I want people to take away from this call that, that can happen. Had we not, what started out as, 45 homes became 75 homes. And a lot of it was because this community put their hand in the air and they said, I saw one truck. Now you need to bring 75 more.
That's a great story. And yeah, I mean, I think again, the benefit, right, of like you mentioned, not only developing this relationships, but then having basically, like a group of folks on the ground to advocate for the projects. And, you mentioned right away, like that, I have heard that come up all over the state many times, right? So and so doesn't want something going across their front yard or their whatever, and it becomes a problem. And, again, having your champions on the ground is a really important piece that I think we often forget about. All right. Well, now is your chance. Does anybody on the call have any questions for Melissa or Tammy?
Melissa and Tammy, this is Robbie, the executive director. Thank you all so much for being a part of our projects here in West Virginia. We really appreciate you both.
Thank you. We love supporting you guys, and Annie's awesome. The great things you guys are doing in broadband expansion will be felt for years to come.
Yeah, you make it easy for us to do this work. So thank you.
Shucks. Anyone else? Again, everyone asked me all sorts of questions about how to work with ISPs. Now's your chance. We got 2 of them right here in front of you.
I just want to add something, Annie, before we go.
Yeah.
Tammy and I, met each other last week, early in the call before people got here. I just think everybody thinks everybody's head to head in this world. And while we are in places, I think at the end of the day, we all want to be good stewards in our community. So, Tammy and I've talked, there's synergies for us that we can kind of piggyback off things we're doing. So at the end of the day, yes, it is about competition, which helps the residents to be, but it is about being good stewards in our community. And so we appreciate partners like Comcast coming to the table and working with us as well.
Melissa, we do have a question here. Brendan says, do either of your enterprises take initiative for outreach to help those that need better internet? And by that, I mean, instead of reaching out, do you do the outreach work?
Let me see if I understand the question, and if I answer this wrong or if it's not clear, don't hesitate to stop me. The short answer to the question is yes. There are many times when we will do the outreach work ourselves. In Cabell County, later today, even at like 3:00, I actually have a call with a resident. One of the things that I'll point out is anywhere Comcast services, we do have a franchise agreement. There are conditions set up in that franchise agreement where if so many homes are built in an area, we have to come up with a plan to deliver service to them within a time frame. That's in, if you can look them up yourselves. So there are times when we internally in government affairs will be aware of a project or a build that's coming online, and one of the first things that we'll do is we'll look around and we'll see, what are the surrounding communities. If we are expanding in this area, what are those surrounding communities? There's some new residential builds in parts of Cabell and Putnam County that we know we may have to go ahead and consider building in other areas. And in those instances, absolutely, we will reach out to a local elected official. We will say, who is the person on the ground that we need to connect with? We need to go and count homes. We need to go and make sure that if we are constructing here in 2027, that then we're building there in 2027 or 2028. So yeah, there are absolutely times when we will take that initiative to reach out directly to the community.
And Mr. Kelly, I'll second, what Tammy said as well. From being in the communities, I knew some counties that had some previous bad experience with other providers. So when we saw the B maps and I saw who got where, I contacted those county commissions and those EDAs. So we're looking future grant opportunities to how to kind of to fit their needs. And then the same as Tammy said, if we see a significant build, and when you start looking at these maps, you can see holes in services. So I think working with our engineering teams, we do that all the time. If we'll be out somewhere and you'll have somebody say, I'll help you go get, go a list of people, like Tammy's HOA experience. So I think, yes, we are open to those communications going both ways, people approaching us or us approaching others about future builds.
Great. Any other questions from anybody else on the call? I do have one question that I thought of. You mentioned community organizations. Are there, we've talked a lot about, relationships for residents that are trying to keep involved in those kinds of things. For either one of you or both, do you have any examples, or do you have, say it is a local library that's trying to put together a program, or a family resource center? I know we've got several family resource centers across the state that are trying to do work. Do you have any examples or kind of suggestions for where like an organization that, maybe doesn't have like specific clients or specific residents in the same way as like a government organization, how they could partner or work with you guys? Does that make sense?
I think opening that conversation is the best thing, to do. Our local FRN here in Roane County, I've spoken with them before, just kind of figuring out what their exact needs are, because there's no one size fits all answer. So really sitting down, whether it's a library or a senior center or an FRN, and hearing that, and it could be, Annie, many times I've pointed, certain people your direction. It's just that connecting them, there could be something there, and if not, starting to help them look for future grant opportunities that could fulfill a need. So I think each conversation is, again, like I said, worth having, and there could be support already out there for them.
Same. Local elected officials, local governments, local franchise authorities. These are people that are just a phone call away, a clerk's office, an economic development organization. They will have ways to plug into us that can be immensely grassroots.
For sure. Well, great. Well, if there's no other questions, I'm watching the chat. I don't see anything popping up. I think, again, both Melissa and Tammy put their information here in the chat box. If you missed it and want to get in hold of them tomorrow, email us. We can get you connected. But I really want to say thank you so much to both of you for hopping on, spending an hour with us today. I think this work is so important, and I'm really grateful to both of your organizations for making the effort to stay involved in what's going on and make sure the community knows what's happening. Because I think so much of that trust issue, again, comes back to, this is scary. Who are these companies? What's even happening? And it's really great to see organizations like yours that are making an effort and really ensuring that communities have a way to reach out and get connected to the information they need when they need it. So
it's true. I'll say, as a librarian, and poor Annie at the beginning, when she was here, I'm basically like this, like, prove it, like, what's going to happen, whatever. I've been on the committees. I know what, and basically just I've heard the talk. Will the walk happen? And Annie absolutely walks her path, but she partners with people that walk their path too, and she makes them walk their path. But, it's nice that you two are here and building that trust, because that's what these organizations that are showing up and meeting with you are doing. We're trying to make we make the relationships with the community, and then we're putting ourselves out there to say, yeah, you can trust them. You can, and it's hard. It's hard to put yourself out there, even to have someone come in and teach something to your people that you're like, oh, they're, oh, you want to be like a control freak a little bit and say, I'll do that. I'll do that. That whole adage, if you want it done well, do it yourself, and it's very difficult to say you can, and this really helps. And I appreciate you all, you both coming out and doing that. And of course, Annie, you're you walk on water for me, Annie.
Oh, shucks.
Appreciate what
Well,
you're
that's
doing. It's going to take a village to get through this, and you are correct. You are the gateway to trust in these communities. So we appreciate what you're doing.
mhm.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Well, thank you again, everybody. Really appreciate everyone hopping on, and this is our last of the spring webinar series, so we'll, I'm sure, have more later this year. They're not scheduled yet, but keep an eye on. We do have our monthly newsletter that we send out. So when we kick back up again, we'll have those out on there. You can follow Generation West Virginia. All of our meeting information is up on our website now. So if you can join us May 26th, we'd love to have you. We've got Luke Peters from the Office of Broadband popping on, and Samantha Sharpman from Connect Humanity is going to talk about some alternative funding resources that they've put together here over the last year that are very, very comprehensive. So I'm excited to hear what she has to say about those. So thanks again, everyone, and have a wonderful rest of your Monday.
Thank you.